Welcome to a new video series called Industry Viewpoints, brought to you by the American Bankruptcy Institute. Each segment will feature an expert providing views on the current state of a particular industry with a focus on what may lie ahead. My guest on this edition is Laura Davis Jones, the head of the Delaware office of Pachulski, Stang, Ziehl, and Jones. Simply said, Laura is the most prominent Chapter 11 lawyer in Delaware, but her practice takes her throughout the country. Laura, given your eminence in the bankruptcy business in Delaware, and for that matter, throughout the country, I wonder if you can start off by giving us a snapshot of where the reorganization activity is today in the spring, summer of 2021, compared to what it was a year ago when we were in the throes of a panic.
We were in the throes of a panic. A year ago, Bill, there was not a bankruptcy lawyer in the country that wasn't busy. Everything, whether it's a very large case, the mid-market, or the small cases, everything was busy for a variety of reasons. Some were just overhang from liquidity challenges before we even started the pandemic, but then the pandemic just added a whole new dimension to it. And you saw a ton of very large cases and also a lot of the mid-market cases. The large cases were a lot of energy, a lot of retail, some manufacturing. The mid-market was some retail, manufacturing, other types of kind of one-off industries, and the small ones again were some retailers, restaurant chains, things like that were smaller. You get into 2021, especially now as we're in the second quarter, it is in the very large cases, it's really slowed down. I personally think that's temporary, but it has really slowed down. And I think one is because we had such a volume through 2020 that cleaned up the liquidity issues and the challenges from the 19 into 20, but then also took care of so many that were affected by the pandemic. And it kind of spread into the first quarter of 21, and then it kind of slowed down. In the middle market, it keeps going. On the middle market, primarily what you're seeing are 363 sales. Just people tried to hang on. They were hanging on. Maybe they've come back. Maybe they were closed for the pandemic. Possibly not. Maybe they were just slowed down for the pandemic. And there's only so long they could take it. They had the benefit of the rent moratorium. They had the benefit of, as I tell people, even though you don't have the costs that are associated with operating an entity, you still have fixed costs. You still have the insurance. You still have the utilities. You still have some rent. Even if there's a rent moratorium, there's generally something you're paying to the landlord. So those costs kept continuing, and the pandemic just went on much longer than people thought. Bill, when it first started, you may remember when it started in March, Bill said, well, kind of end of June, it'll be behind us. Our president was saying, we're pretty much, you can see the end of the tunnel. It's pretty much behind us. Then we got into September. Then we were in the holiday. And then, it just kept going. And so it was very difficult on, retailers, as you and I are talking about, but also on many industries. But having said that, many got through it. There were a lot of refinancings, a lot of restructurings, and then there were a lot of just 363 sales followed by conversions. Or if you had a good stomach, there were a lot of people that invested, did a 363, frankly, got a lot of businesses at a good price. And then now we're holding on. We'll see where things stabilize out. And we're going through 2021. So I think you're going to see a little slower period right now.
I see. Well, now let's focus on retail, our assigned topic. What was let's call it the bankruptcy situation for retailers a year ago?
A year ago was extremely busy. You had a lot of the big chains that were just suffering the ongoing effects of what I call and what the world calls the Amazon effect. People got very comfortable with sitting in their homes and ordering product online, whatever it may be, and having it delivered to their porch. And unlike what it used to be, where you didn't really order online because you had shipping costs, or if you didn't like it, you returned it, you had costs, or maybe it never came to you, or it took 3 weeks. Now, as we know, you get things delivered in a matter of a couple of hours. So people have moved to that. And if you want to see the product before you buy it, you go down the street and look at one brick and mortar rather than a bunch of malls where you're shopping and competing on prices. Now you can sit in your living room and just compete on prices on your internet.
So tell me, what is the, let's call it the bankruptcy environment for retailers right now, a year after the panic began?
A year after the pandemic, I think in 2020, you read a lot of articles on it. Pretty much every chain that people are aware of has filed or has gotten ready to file or was ready to file and then got bolstered by somebody that put some money in. But 2020 was a ridiculously busy year for retail. Now in kind of the middle market, it's still busy, but it's much smaller businesses. It's maybe restaurants with 5 to 20 stores or single retail establishments. And they're doing 363 sales, or frankly, a lot of them are just going out of business.
Well, Laura, do we have many big retailers still in the pipeline to be fixed in Chapter 11 or through sales?
I would say no more than 5 right now, because so many have of what I consider the real big ones. I think it'll be interesting to see how the ones that restructured rather than either selling and going out of business, liquidating, the ones that restructured, it'll be interesting to see how they do. And I think you're going to have to wait, give it 12 to 15 months, Bill, to see how these things sort out. Because, you had what's hard for the commercial landlords was the rent moratorium. What was good for the retailers, it was a rent moratorium. So when they come back to the real world and they have to pay the rent, and even if it's now a reduced settled upon rent amount, it's a whole different world when you have to pay it versus you just have to accrue it on your records.
Yeah. Well, I remember a year ago, there was, and I can't say whether I was surprised or not by it, that some prominent landlords bought up retail chains.
Yes.
Is that going to happen some more, or is that over with?
I think that's over with for now. Again, I keep saying the same thing, but I think there's an overhang here of the pandemic, of the change in the political landscape, that people are just going to have to let this settle out. Remember other elements that go along with this. You had a lot of people who didn't have jobs and were relying strictly on the stimulus checks they received or the unemployment or both. Now those folks are starting to come back into the market. People are going to get out of their sweats and actually have to put some clothes on of decent caliber and go to work 2 to 5 days a week. So there's just a lot of overhang that has to happen here. The other thing, Bill, as you know, if you go out to dinner or if you're going to retailers now, it's very hard for them to attract employees. And there's a bunch of different ideas on what has caused that. But even if you assume it's just because people change careers because they had to, I think you have to add to it, a lot of people changed geography. They moved out of the city. A lot of the millennials bought homes out in the suburbs, what have you. I think this is all going to have to shake out for what I would think would be another 6 to 18 months just to see how it ends. So to answer your question, even though there's a lot of money there's a lot of money in the capital markets.
Well, let me ask you.
I don't think you're going to see them invest it right now.
Let me ask you about wages, because there is some substantial pressure to raise wages in this economy right now, because Lord of mercy, you walk down the street, every store has got a hiring now sign out front. And you walk into some many stores and it's very clear they don't have enough folks on the floor to help their customers. So let me ask you this, Laura. In your judgment, will being forced to raise wages help or hurt retailers?
I think given time, it'll actually help. You are right that I think the $15 minimum wage is definitely coming. It's being pushed by our Delaware president, and I think you will see that happen. And I think it's good for the retailers in terms of the quality and the sustaining power that they will have with their employees, paying them at that wage. But it's going to take the time for the people that have left the retail space, which is a lot. And they left for a variety of reasons, not receiving benefits, not be receiving that many wages. The pandemic hit, they decided to move out of the city, they moved geography. I think if you get that wage back up, you'll see quality employees come back to it. And over time, that will be very helpful to the retailers. Now, what's going to obviously play against that is, do you have to raise prices to accommodate that? Or will the volume, because retailers are able to function much more efficiently and with much more quality, will the volume just go up on its own? You're going to have all those competing factors, Bill, that's going to make that decision. But I think way too early to call it.
Well, listen, although it may be too early to call it, how do you see retail looking 6 to 18 months from now?
I think you're going to see 18 months from now, 15 months from now, I think you will see the retailers stabilize, but still have a pretty good overhang of debt. With all the money in the capital markets, I think you'll see a number of the retailers go into bankruptcy or go re-enter bankruptcy with pre-negotiated cases or pre-packed cases, where it will be just to fix the capital structure one more time. Operationally, they'll probably be in good shape, but they need to fix the capital structure.
I see. So sounds to me like you're saying we're going to see a spate of chapter 22 or chapter 33.
I think so, but I think you're at least, I think you'll get through this holiday season. You may even get close to next holiday season or past it till you'll see that. But again, I don't think it'll be at the operational level. I think the ones that are operationally going to have problems, they'll probably be gone. Those will be, and I mean that respectfully, but they'll be very quick 363. So they'll just liquidate over in the beginning of next year or through the summer of next year. But then I think the ones where they're operationally, they have come back, they're going to realize that the overhang they still have of debt that they've taken on is going to have to be refinanced one more time.
Well, do you think there is going to be money out there that is bent on buying up retailers after several years of bad experience with retailing?
I think so. I think there's going to be capital markets, all the money in the capital markets. I think they will put it in. But I think another issue that's going to have to settle down before you even have that happen is what happens with the commercial landlords themselves. I think that's going to be the next kind of big wave of analysis and possibly bankruptcy activity you're going to see is what's going to happen with the commercial landlords themselves, and then looking at retail behind that.
Well, tell you what, Laura, why don't we end by looking at the issue of rent expense, occupancy expense. Do you believe that the effect of this horrible pandemic is going to have a beneficial effect for retailers in terms of reducing occupancy expenses?
I don't think the pandemic will have changed that much, but I do think the ongoing Amazon effect will, Bill. I think while the moratorium will end, rent prices will go back up, but I just don't think they're going to be able to find enough people or enough retailers, if you will, to continue to pay that contract rate. Because I think the retailers are going to keep their operations fairly, I want to say measured. I don't think you're going to see a lot of stores that are kept open that are what we used to always call on the bubble or poor performing stores. I think you're going to see retailers keeping up with it and keeping and closing out those stores and just keeping their well operating stores and having to pay the contract rate on those stores.
Laura, thank you for your insightful analysis of retail, present and future. We look forward to seeing how retailers and their landlords fare in the next 6 to 18 months. Retail and commercial real estate will be the fodder for upcoming ABI events and publications. To find out, have a look at abi.org for the latest updates. And thank you for tuning in. In the Industry Viewpoints series in upcoming days and weeks, we will talk with other experts about the future of industries that are affected by our turbulent economic times. Until then, be well, stay safe, good day.